Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor, the great Sontaran tie-upper, as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode 453. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
I do well.
I'm pretty good. I'm off again till Friday.
Wow. Lots of vacation. Burning vacation before the end of the year.
Before the end of the year. It's the blessing and the curse of having been at the station for 23 years. Is I have 4 weeks of vacation, but a very limited amount of time to use it because of sweeps months, although that is supposedly going away. But that's what you've been telling us for 2 years now. But so there, I don't think a lot of listeners know how that works. There are 4 sweeps months in a year, so there are 4 months out of the year that we cannot take vacation. So that leaves you 8 months that you can, which still seems like a lot, except for until this year. This is to be fair to my work. Until this year, you couldn't take off any of the same time that another person that works so I'm a producer, so another producer can't take off at the same time. And so then you have to schedule around each other so that you're not off. So it just, and then, obviously you can't count weekends because you're already off on weekends. So it really narrows the days you can take off. So
makes me so glad that the state just lets your vacation roll over.
Yeah,
I can carry over whatever I want.
wish ours did that
it's
because
so nice.
Sometimes it's just a pain to take my vacation.
Of course, the downside of this method is at the station, you got to take it right away.
Yes.
And assuming you stay around to accumulate it. I actually have to wait for it to accumulate.
Yeah.
So there is a downside.
That is a benefit for us. And, the other thing is that they usually don't let you take as much as I'm taking in a quarter or in a month, for that matter. But they've been pretty generous with me. And I'm off Christmas Day, which I was kind of surprised by that since I was off on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So
helps to be a senior producer.
I guess that must be it. Some seniority. After 23 years, finally some seniority.
I took the day off because it snowed.
I had a late start because it snowed.
See, that was the crazy thing is this is probably the first snow day that I've ever had since I've worked at news, because you have to come in. If you work in news, you have to be. If you're scheduled, you definitely have to be there. And then there oftentimes, if it's a big snowstorm, although this one didn't constitute that, I think, but then you're called in. But I was yesterday and today. I didn't get a phone call one.
What was funny is I goofed. I had sent the text earlier because Cheyenne's daycare was closed because of the weather, and so I sent a text to Dave and my boss and let him know, hey, daycare's closed. I'm not coming in. I'm gonna stay home with her. And then I was texting you guys about road conditions and whether or not we were going to get together to record tonight. So I sent the next text, which was, roads seem to be pretty fine. Side streets are sloppy. Mine's really icy, but you can navigate it. And my boss replied with, I don't care.
Oopsie.
And then Dave started laughing. And then my boss said, you better be here all the earlier the next day, Cratchit. And I realized, there's only 2 groups of people I've texted today, and that went to the wrong group.
Oops.
Do you guys watch anything?
Thank goodness it was fairly benign.
I've been doing the Star Wars catch-up again still. We watched, we've watched Rogue One, and I don't know if I think even between then I've watched Solo and Rogue One and New Hope and maybe even Revenge of the Sith. I don't remember what I mentioned last week. Anyway, we're up to, we just watched A New Hope tonight, so we got 4 more to go. We
are also doing Prelude to Skywalker, and we finished Empire tonight. So I have 3 more to go.
I finished before I started halfway through. Once I caught up on Mandalorian, I burned through the rest of my movies.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I didn't go back to the prequels. I just started with A New Hope.
Oh, okay.
Which I started with A New Hope back on Star Wars Day, and then picked up Empire. with the intention
that
of
works. Yeah.
in May, with the intention of doing a lead up to it, and just never got back around to it until
recently.
We got Disney Plus, so I could
makes it
watch
easier.
The Mandalorian.
Sure makes it easier. Although we can't watch Last Jedi on there, so.
But that's on Netflix.
Yes, it is.
As is Solo.
Yeah, and Solos, which I have that. I
own
own them all in digital except for the 6 films in the Skywalker saga. Which did you guys see that iTunes also has the whole set on $50? So half price if you want them digitally.
I've got them digitally on Disney Plus.
If I didn't have Disney Plus
on my hard drive,
if I didn't have them on Disney Plus right now, I probably would have jumped on that digital. But I thought, but I have everything from Force Awakens on digitally, so I sit there and go.
So do I.
Because when you buy the Blu-rays now, you get the digital copy.
Yeah.
So.
It's one of those things, though, where, unlike Netflix, I'm not too worried about it dropping off Disney Plus.
Yeah,
because that's pretty much a huge selling point
exactly.
for the whole reason to subscribe.
That particular title, and Solo, as soon as they drop off of Netflix, they're going to Disney Plus.
Exactly.
So.
Until you notice one of the categories on your Disney Plus is out of the vault.
Yeah.
So
I suppose they could, but
they could have all the stuff once they get it really loaded up and then go, oh, this is going away, and put it back in the vault so it's not available digitally for 5 years and then bring it back out.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
I don't see it happening
either.
But then again, it's Disney, so who knows?
Well, I watched Home Alone 2. It's not as good as the first one. And I know that sounds like a well duh statement, but I love the first one, and I've only seen the second one a couple of times, but I remember those times thinking, yeah, that's almost as good as the first one. Almost as good as the first one. I watched it this time and I thought, no, this isn't very good. I mean, it's still fun, but it really is a retread, and I think maybe that's why my memory makes me think it was almost as good as the first one, because it practically is the first one.
Yeah, it's very, very beat for beat.
So I think, but watching it this time, I thought, and maybe it's because I watched them so close together now. But watching it this time, I thought, yeah, they really retreaded this, and I'm not sure it works as well. So,
we just had a discussion about this earlier tonight, and I couldn't remember. Which one do they go to Paris?
That's in the first one.
That's the first one is going to Paris, and the second one they go to Florida.
Florida, yeah.
Okay.
And Kevin goes to New York.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the order.
Yep.
We finished The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel Season 3. Not as good as the first 2 seasons, but I think part of it's because I think they know they have a 4th season. They had renewed it for 2 seasons instead of just 1. So it didn't feel like the story was as tight and cohesive because, it's being stretched out
feel like
into
they
the
have
next
to sprint to the finish line.
Yeah, or try to make sure that it ends in such a way that, you get somewhat of a resolution. But it was pretty good. It's still worth watching if you haven't watched it yet. And then we watched Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas.
We watched that today too.
I don't think I've never seen that one. I don't think
Mason. I haven't seen Twice Upon a Christmas. It occurred to me after we finished, and the little synopsis came up for the next one, and I went, "Oh, I guess I haven't. I thought I'd seen it, but it didn't look familiar. So now I guess I'll have to watch that one." But yeah, Mason popped Disney. He's been in a real Christmas mood. He drug out all my Rankin and Bass discs, and he's been watching those, and he's just really been in a Christmas movie and video mood, and so it kind of warms my heart. I walk into the room and he's already watching something, and I don't get after him for not waiting on me. I just sit down and watch it with him. So.
Nice.
We watched Year Without a Santa Claus earlier today. That's Mel's favorite. All
right, well, should we move on to feedback? No, news.
You can do them in whatever order you want, Glenn.
Dang it, every time.
Whatever order.
I'm just going to switch them up for good. No, I'm not. What's in the news?
They have announced some new guest stars for Series 12. Previously rumored, Anjali Mohindra will be coming onto the show. That name might be familiar because she played Ronnie in the Sarah Jane Adventures. She is not playing Ronnie in Series 12. It's a brand new character.
Yeah.
Boo.
And that was one that leaked way back in the summer.
Yeah,
well,
back when they were filming, pretty much.
Late summer, fall, I guess it was.
And then Laura Frazier is going to guest star in an episode. She is currently starred in various dramas, including The Missing and Better Call Saul. Not a name I recognize, but she looks familiar.
Yeah, I don't recognize that one either.
So that's some more tantalizing bits about Series 12 coming up. Up next in news, BBC Books is going to publish a new Target novel collection in July 2020. So the books we're getting in July 2020 include a Target... Hold on. This article is not written very well. A Target edition of The Pirate Planets, the TV movie, The Witchfinders, Dalek, and The Crimson Aura.
And Resurrection and Revelation are going to be Target novelized.
Yes, those two also.
They're going to be...
They're going to go from
get the
hardback
look,
to
right,
the...
right,
yeah, which is the same thing that
paperback.
Pirate Planet's getting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that one's already been done.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just hit that.
We're all used to it, Sean. We're all used to it.
Well, I that's how excited I was over the TV movie. I dropped my drink. So we've not had a novelization of that, like, ever, right?
Of the TV movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not that I'm aware of.
I seem to think there is a novel out there, and I don't know if I'm just... that's a fan-produced something, or if there actually is one, but it seems to me that there is a novelization of the TV movie out there.
Why have we not read it?
That's a good question. Which now leads me to believe that there's not, because we would have definitely
surely we
read
would.
There
it.
is a novel of the film.
Oh, there is. Okay.
It's called The Novel of the Film.
Ah. Why have we not read that?
Written by Gary Russell.
That'll give us another reason to do Doctor Who the movie.
Yep. Because we need so many excuses.
So it was a BBC Books novelization. It wasn't a Target novelization.
Okay.
But now it will be.
Now it will be, because it'll get the nice fancy Target novelization cover. Because I think that's the only difference to these books.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Except for the new ones, like Witchfinders is...
Well, yeah, obviously
Brand
that's
has
an
not
actual
been.
new
Yeah.
novelization.
There's
All
a
the
part
new
of me
series ones.
that just wants to go ahead and start picking them up. And,
Yeah.
You know, I'll get another complete set eventually. But when I think about the fact that I had so many of those Target novelizations that I foolishly got rid of, that I don't know what I was thinking.
What else?
Well, speaking of books, Lethbridge Stewart books, the next series, Series 3, in Bloodlines, have announced the next book, An Ordinary Man, written by Andy Frankham Allen and Tim Gambrell. It will be the third book in the series, and it removes... Here's a brief synopsis. The destruction of the Casual Nexus continues as the timelines of the Lethbridge Stewarts and Traverses are wiped out of existence.
Ooh.
A new reality has been created, so very close to the essential timeline, and it is into this that reality that Anne Travers is sent to retrieve a man who bears a shocking resemblance to Alistair Lethbridge Stewart. So there's more of a synopsis on there, but that's the next book in the series.
That's the hook.
That's the hook right there. Available for pre-order.
Hmm.
And our last bit of news.
We should be doing that for Christmas, too.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. Sorry. We're over here schedule planning while you're trying to do news. You go ahead.
The last
me
bit of
something shiny. It's not my fault.
The last bit of news, Big Finish is bringing multiple masters together again in Masterful. This time, John Sims makes his Big Finish debut.
Woo!
That'll be cool.
That's going to be really cool. Written by James Goss, a 3-hour epic adventure will also feature actors Jeffrey Beavers, Mark Gatiss, Derek Jacobi, Alex McQueen, Milo Parker, and Eric Roberts. And, of course, Michelle Gomez.
Woo!
So
Did
this
you
will
just boo?
No, I wooed.
Oh, it sounded like boo.
This will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Master.
Oh. Sean, you're supposed to say no, it won't.
Woo!
But it's not coming until 2021.
No, you're supposed to
I
say
understand
no,
because
it won't.
because technically it'd be the 51st anniversary because he was the war chief. I get it. I know where you're going with this. I will not be goaded, okay? You can show me something shiny and distract me, but you're not going to poke me with a stick.
Actually,
and
this
expect
year
me
would be
to-
the 50th anniversary if we go by that logic.
That's on the heels of you trying to poke me with it last year. Last week.
last week. Well, that's why I can't do the same joke 2 weeks in a row. That would be like whipping a dead horse.
I suppose so.
So you can pre-order this limited edition 8 CD box sets.
Jeez.
It's going to include the 3 hours of Masterful, a behind the scenes, Short Trips, I Am the Master, and Short Trips, The Switching, both previously available. And discs 6 through 8 is a new narrated audio book featuring the Third Doctor, the Master, and units.
Ooh.
It does not give any more details about this audiobook other than that.
Well, that sounds interesting. I'll be darned.
Well, Big Finish, treat John Sim right and make him part of the family so that we can have...
Well, they've got Eric Roberts coming back all the time, so they must treat him well.
Well, everybody who's come in has pretty much stuck around.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
Well, and I don't know about the War Doctor where they crossed over multiple masters previously, but the Diary of River Song one did not have the masters interacting. So this will actually this story at the very least will actually have the masters interacting with each other.
Yeah.
to which we
That's
can only
cool.
say it's about time. I mean,
Right.
we have 6...
It's Doctor Who. It's always about time.
If we can have 6 multi-doctor stories, surely we can have a master.
Yeah, multi-masters. Cool.
That's it for news.
All right. Well, let's move on to our review. No, I'm just kidding. Feedback.
You put them in any order you want, Glenn.
No, because we'd forget to do feedback at the end of the show, and then we'd feel bad for Jamie.
And we do have feedback from Jamie. And Jamie writes, "Welcome back, Vortexers. Glad you had a nice hiatus. Sad to hear about Terrence Dix. Yes, I know this is a bit late, but that's the way things go when I give you such a large amount. See, Sean, you can speak Klingon just as well as I can, which is barely. Enjoyable stalling. Interesting answer to the does extra Perry stories hurt the sacrifice in caves? I could see that going either way depending on who you ask. Thanks for the answers on the DVD versus Blu-ray collecting. I agree that going Blu-ray is a no-brainer. Heck, the player would pay for itself in savings from not buying DVDs. As far as a completionist or favorites, at this point I'm thinking completionist. I'm still working my way through my watch-through. Just finished Modwin Undead. When I'm done with my watch-through, I'll probably jump around a bit more. I'm also thinking of potential nephews and nieces, and at some point, my own kids down the road and introducing them to Doctor Who. At that point, the library becomes very unreliable. So thanks for your input. Hopefully it helps other people who are looking at starting a collection. Moving on to episode 171. I enjoyed your discussions on Captain America Winter Soldier. I'd have to say it's one of the best of the MCU films and one of my favorites. I enjoyed your report from the St. Louis Comic-Con as well. The War Machines. I really enjoyed this one. Hartnell's finally morphing into the Doctor as we know him today. The main villain is well written, apart from the whole Doctor Who thing. Dodo's kind of worthless, and Ben and Polly are rather likable and engaging. A few things from your discussion or my thoughts on the story stand out. First, I believe it was Sean who put forth the Doctor Who is required comes from Wotan absorbing the Cushing films. I'd buy that. Second, Wotan feels like a proto-version of the Internet, especially it was originally designed for government military use. He, and I think that's an acceptable pronoun to use, also feels like Ultron, who wants to kill humanity to save the planet. If you watch the story with that in mind, it makes a whole lot of sense. And finally, for the War Machines at least, Ben and Polly. They really are an inseparable pair. Personally, though, I like Polly better. She seems to have more personality and isn't as stubborn or disbelieving as Ben. They're both still up there in the higher ranks of early companions. Time Works. I enjoyed this story. It takes the time travel aspects of Who and plays with them in a fun and interesting way. Not sure how this would have worked in the Divergent universe with no time or anti-time, but still enjoyable and experimental big finish. That's something I see in a review site that I visit most often. Doc Oho Reviews is that they seem to be playing it safe these days and relying on nostalgia and filling gaps from the show with sequels, prequels, and dangling plot threads. But anyways, this one is an enjoyable story. Episode 172, In the Image of the Fendal. I've seen this, though it's been a while. I remember it being good, the effects are decent, the plot works for the most part. It's just not one of my favorites. Root of Evil, the Puffin book. I don't remember this at all, so I really can't say more than that. But as for plant-based enemies, there's the Varga plants, the Crinoids, the Vervoids, the seaweed monster from Fury of the Deep, and Megalos, at least as far as TV goes. Episode 173 and 174, this was your coverage of Torchwood Miracle Day. Never seen it. Had a really hard time getting into Torchwood, as I've said before, but Brenda's feedback on was excellent, though. Episode 175 and Part 1 of the Great Intelligence Archive. I think the Great Intelligence is a decent villain, while the Robot Yeti are just your bog-standard monster. I've already gone on about the snowmen, so instead I'll talk a bit about the Abominable Snowmen. A decent story, and the first without any incidental music. Having no music helps with the suspense, I think, and it lets the sound effects shine. The Web of Fear. A good story that gives more threatening Yeti, the introduction of the Brig and Proto-Unit. I understand rushing it out with a recon, but I really think they should have animated the missing episode and re-released it. Heck, animate the Abominable Snowman, and they can release a Great Intelligence box set with downtime as a bonus feature. Keep up the great show, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
And as always, your comments are welcome as well. If you would like to send us feedback, you can push that button on the website.
All right, well, let's move on to our reviews.
Harvest of the Sycorax. In the far future, humanity has a remedy for everything. Whatever the problem, PharmaCore has the answer, and a designer disease tailored to every human's blood type. Zanzibar hashtag has no need to be sad, scared, stressed, or depressed ever again. That is, until vicious aliens arrive on her space station, intent on opening its vault. What will it mean for the human race if the Sycorax take control of what's inside? And when the 7th Doctor arrives on the scene, can he help convince Zanzibar to care about her life long enough to help him?
I think I kind of come right down in the middle on this one. It's kind of a bum, but it's also kind of a not a bum.
Well, why?
There are elements to it that I liked. I liked all of the world building that they did with this PharmaCore and the idea that humanity's going through this designer drug phase. That was cool. I love the idea of everybody's given up a blood sample in order to be part of this blah, blah, blah. And now we've got them all locked in a vault. That seems like something very plausible and stupid that we would do as a species. And now here come the Sycorax, and they're going to try and get a hold of it. And oh, wow, is that terrible? That was all good. But the Sycorax, I've really kind of come to the conclusion that the Sycorax are one-note villains.
Yeah.
And not very good ones.
No, I agree.
At that. And so to bring them in and I mean, for all credit to the author of this one for trying to make them scary. Because this really is kind of a horrific idea that they could conceivably get everybody. But then we've got the 7th Doctor, who of any of the Doctors is probably the most ill-suited to go up against the Sycorax because they are so beneath him. Not just like a little bit, like a lot. That you've got the master manipulator, and I didn't buy that he was in any danger at any point in time during any of this. Even when they tried to make me believe that he had really been taken over and had to put himself in a coma to stop it from happening. It's like, you're playing somebody with something. I just don't quite get it. And so it just kind of, it wavered back and forth for me. It made me realize that while I've complained with some of the other box sets that at least they, gave the villain something new as opposed to rehashing exactly what they did other than Weeping Angels. And this one was kind of a new thing for the Sycorax.
It is, but it isn't, because suddenly we're dealing with the blood thing again. But the 10th Doctor so waves that off as, it's just, blood manipulation. It's like he almost downplays it as though you really can't do much with it. It's like hypnosis. You can't actually make somebody do something they don't want to do. And so to give them so much control over using the blood this time seemed to be like they were taking it to, it felt a lot like taking the angels in the Flesh and Stone and Time of the Angels, where they kind of just threw everything at the angels to try to make them scarier, and it didn't really stick with the MO of what we've already established. Same thing with the Sycorax. It felt like, we've got to do something with the blood. Let's ramp it up a little bit and make it. And I agree with your points too. The fact that eventually we will have self-medicated ourselves into stupor, and that we probably are dumb enough to create this universal blood bank. However, my other problem with this story is they're so doped up that they don't recognize. I had a hard time buying that you would be in a situation as a society so much that you would have completely erased any sort of natural emotions that you could have. I mean, I realize that there are drugs out there that, can do essentially what these drugs are doing. And by continually medicating yourself away from emotions is a bad idea. But this felt like it was so extreme that every time they discovered a new emotion, it was just this massive discovery of why am I feeling this way? I just didn't buy that we would ever get to that point, despite how much medication you were taking, that you would ever get to that point where you would not be familiar with certain emotions.
On the original, as I was listening to it, I had the same thoughts. I thought this is just totally unrealistic that you would medicate yourself to the point where you're like, what is this? Oh, that's panic. Surely you would know what that is. Even at a clinical or academic level, you would know what that is. But then after I was done listening to it, I kind of started thinking about it. It was like, well, you know what? Realistically, if these drugs had come out and had been as wildly successful as they were for the majority of the population to be involved in them, it would probably only take one generation for that to be, kids are going to be growing up being injected with this stuff. Oh, they're crying. Give them one of these. And you just kind of, you beat it out of them.
I agree that it could be possible, but this particular situation doesn't lend to that, and the reason being is because there is some sort of robot with each one of them that identifies that something is wrong and requests to medicate them. It doesn't say, it's not an automatic thing. You still have to ask for it. It's a yes. You still have to give them an affirmative to take it. And each time the thing is describing that your levels are going up. So there must be a recognition of the emotion, and then the response is to take the medication, right?
Right.
So when they don't take the medication, they still should be able to identify panic. They should still be able to identify anger. They should still be able to identify angst. They may not experience it. They may not fully go into that experience, but they seem very in the dark of what is this that I'm feeling. When they start to feel that, then they get medicated. So you have at least an inkling of what that's like before the medication is administered. So that's the reason I have a problem with believing that they would go this far at this point, because I agree that you're right, that I think that can be done, but I think when we get to that point is when the medication is immediately being administered when it's realized by some sort of influence, these computers or whatever, and just automatically done. Whereas this one, it seemed like they started to feel something, and then it said, "You're experiencing this. I recommend blah blah blah," and then they would go okay, and then they would take it. So
it's a bit like Equilibrium, but not nearly done as well, because they feel like they should have been in this kind of zombified state almost, if they're going to have that reaction to what emotion am I having. But for the most part, they seem okay. I mean, she's quite capable of recognizing that she's suddenly very quickly developed feelings for this other woman, which was a beautiful scene. But then, okay, cool. But if you recognize that, you should be able to recognize panic.
Right.
Or, so it couldn't quite make up its mind how far it wanted to go with that.
What it did do well, though, was once she was off the drugs and fully in it, experiencing those emotions, I thought the exploration of that aspect of it was well. When she was further into it, of feeling all the different levels of grief and all this stuff after she decided not to take it, not when she's wondering what it is, when she recognizes what it is and exploring how she's feeling about that, I thought that was all really well done.
I'll give you that.
What else on this one?
It was my first time listening to it. It was one for me that was just kind of like, yeah, it was okay.
Right. I'm in the same boat with it. I always enjoy hearing Sylvester McCoy's Seventh Doctor, and so that elevates to a point of enjoyability. But I just was like, yeah, that was okay.
It's probably my least favorite on the whole box set, just because it doesn't make enough of an impression on me for me to remember. Like, next week I will probably have forgotten most of the fine details of the story just because it doesn't land with me anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't stick with you. And in a way, that's a shame, because I think the Sycorax...
I think it goes back to the Sycorax not being a very good villain.
Well, yeah, they're not. And I have to be careful here, because I want to say that maybe they could be. Like, legitimately, this idea of this kind of bully on the block is kind of an intriguing idea. But the problem, especially with a bully that's this kind of alpha dog, is that, well, once you slap them down and you establish that they're not the alpha dog anymore, that's it. Their threat is over with.
Yeah.
So as a one-timer, yeah, they kind of work. And I can even, if I really work at it, I can retroactively headcanon why the 10th Doctor is dismissing it as voodoo. If we look at it linearly, the 7th Doctor, he's obviously had some experience with them, or at least knows of them, and is familiar with this blood control. But maybe the first couple of times with it,
he doesn't realize how little of an impact there is.
Yeah, it's more. It sounds more mystical than it really is. And by the time the 10th Doctor comes around, it's that's
been there, done that.
That's voodoo.
Yeah.
We're not going to even bother with it. So I can kind of sort of make that work, but
sure.
Then again, I don't know.
And going back to what you guys were saying about the threats of what they're trying to do, I never really felt like they really controlled anybody in a bad way. Like the threat of them actually controlling somebody never seemed as bad as the threat of them just getting into this vault. Am I misremembering some? Is there less of an? Is there something I'm forgetting of? Their
getting into the vault
is the whole threat.
Well, but once they got into the vault, when they get into the vault and they get access to all this, then they would have control over all these people.
Right, but there was nothing throughout the story that made me feel like, oh yeah, the few people they have control over was really that menacing towards.
Yeah, they didn't do anything actively with anybody that they had control.
It was just an ongoing threat of, we can have a slave race.
It was the end goal of we're going to do this to you.
That's not a big enough threat for you, though?
Well, but I agree. It maybe would have been a little more interesting or scary if, okay, we're going to put Bob under the blood control, and you're going to let us into the vault. Well, we can't do it. Bob, kill her. And then Bob goes forward and does the action instead of random alien killing. There were a lot of people that died at the hands of the Sycorax in this. But if they had forced another human to do it, then it's kind of that added level of, oh crap, I don't want to be the one responsible for offing any of my friends in the office.
Well, it raised the stakes higher.
Well, but they controlled the doctor in that such a way that he was going to have to fight what's her name.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, they did. He didn't have control, and fortunately, she pushed him back into that little room. But so
I totally believe that. Yep.
And I did like the twist, I guess if you could call it that. It was pretty early telegraphed, of the designer disease, allowing the certain people not be controlled.
Oh, yeah.
That was a nice touch to tie it all together. I like that.
Which kind of brings up an interesting point that I was thinking of, left hanging at the end of the episode was, okay, so we've knocked all the Sycorax out. They're unconscious in this feedback loop. And the one executive is stranded on their spaceship. And the doctor says, well, maybe you'll pass a nice planet or, okay, yeah, you're on your own. So, just out of morbid curiosity, we get to a planet. Is the doctor suggesting that he, beam all the Sycorax down and abandon them there? Or is he saying you should get off the ship at the first available opportunity? I don't know how to take that.
I thought he was telling I thought the idea was that the guy should get off the ship as soon as he can.
So too.
Yeah.
Which logically makes sense
Before they wake up, if at all possible.
But this guy being who he is.
Well, do we know that he would have the capability to beam them down? I mean, their ship's just a giant rock. They fly through space, so I don't know that they had a lot of technology.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
and that's something else that I did like. Going back to the world building is kind of a further exploration of the Sycorax spaceship, and that their engine room is a volcano, and there's some cool ideas here at work.
Well, they had the worship room that was a statue made of bones and stuff, which is a little world building there too. So
yeah, little moments that I thought were very cool.
It's got some cool ideas. I just don't think the Sycorax as a threat is a big enough threat.
Yeah.
Maybe had their overall, plan for humanity been worse than just having a slave race, I would have thought that the whole thing would have been more important. I don't know.
Robo-men, Cybermen. Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah.
Slave races for humanity are nothing new right now.
And really, how is it different than them most of the time anyways?
What was her name? Somebody hashtag?
Zanzibar?
Zanzibar. I did like Zanzibar.
She was good.
I thought she was very good. I felt numerous times that, once again, the doctor was maybe looking at recruiting, that he was kind of on the lookout for somebody, and that she certainly, I think, fit the mold of a very strong potential companion candidate.
Yeah.
I didn't get that impression this time. I thought she was fun. I thought she did a good job. I thought that the character was interesting, but I didn't. A lot of times I feel like the doctor's auditioning companions, but this time I didn't get that vibe for some reason. All right, well, should we do the Sontaran ordeal?
An instance of the Time War brings centuries of conflict to the planet Dracus, and the Eighth Doctor is there to witness the terrible results. A Sontaran fleet, desperate to join the epic conflict, follows in its wake to take advantage of the fallout. But when Commander Jask is beamed down to the ravaged surface, there is more to his arrival than first appears. Soon, an unlikely champion joins forces with the Time Lord to fight for the future of her world, and together they must face the Sontaran Ordeal.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, I like this one. This one has been the best, I think, of all of the stories in this box set. Unfortunately, there's no classic monster in this one. I mean, I'm sorry, there's no new monster in this one. It's a classic villain. It's the Sontarans, and I had hoped that there would be a little surprise that we'd get something at least they could say, that this was a new monsters, but it's not. It's Sontarans. The fact that we had Dan Starkey doing one of the voices, and he voiced a Sontaran, or he performed a Sontaran in the new series.
And the guy who
several
played the
Sontarans in this new series.
and the guy who played the general was back as a Sontaran also
Yeah.
from Stratagem and Poison Sky.
Yeah, the guy that played Mike on The Young Ones. That still throws me for a
Stahl.
loop. I still think that's crazy.
I will say that Dan Starkey's Jax was really good. And to the point where when he first appeared in the story, I actually thought it was... excuse me. I actually thought it was the commander from Sontaran Experiment. I mean, he had that kind of gravitas to his voice.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't sound like a potato at all. But no, this one's kind of just... I mean, they don't really do anything new. We're not stretching the envelope or anything, but this one to me was kind of like Doctor Who comfort food. It did exactly what I wanted it to do, and it gave me a fun story that was enjoyable.
Apparently, there was the character that Dan Starkey played in End of Time, the Sontaran. His name was Jask also.
Oh, is that right?
Really?
So you could almost, say this is the exact same character that was hunting Mickey and Martha that then later was trying to get into the Time War.
Huh.
So
Okay.
it is a new series character. It's a new series character, but not
Yeah, it's still
a new
not-
series
yeah,
villain.
Okay, all right.
If you look at it through that
It's
lens...
a stretch.
Yeah.
It's a stretch, but if you look through that lens, it ticks the box, and I'm okay with it
Yeah,
now.
I guess.
And because it's the new series actors coming back for it, it's a stretch.
I
give
will
them that.
resend my shenanigans.
Had the story not been as good as it was, it would have been total shenanigans. But because it was such a good story, I'm okay with it.
Well, yeah, I guess since they used Jask, and then Jask was the character then. Okay.
Well, I'm going to put one more caveat on that. If they use Jask on purpose, then it's okay, and I'll rescind the shenanigans. If it was
presume
completely
that's not-
accidental.
I don't think that was coincidental. I think that was
Quite the name to try to choose.
Yeah.
To...
I think that was probably purposeful.
I don't know. It's a sci-fi name. You got to have a J and a K and a Q, and
It's not a very Sontaran name.
It's not.
Jask? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's always those short 4-letter or 5-letter.
Yeah, I guess I'm just used to them
Lynx,
starting with
Jask.
S. I guess
Yeah.
Lynx, yeah.
Oh, Lynx, yeah.
With the X, yeah.
Star.
It sounded like they were saying stank every single time they said stank.
I totally thought it was.
I
Stank.
thought so too. Stank.
Apparently it's E, stink.
Paul McGann, once again, one of the best things in the story. The anguish with which this falls apart for him very quickly. From the pleas of just don't take the war here. don't let this happen. And then it happens. And then going through the adventure and getting to the end and being turned on by another potential companion, interview that was happening. And not that she was going to leave her kids or anything, but I just, yeah, this one's kind of cool too, Doc.
It was more apparent that he was wanting her to travel with him than it was with Seven.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But Eight never ever feels to me like he's auditioning companions ever. At the end of the story, he always seems to imply or in a roundabout way ask them to come along, but he never throughout any story ever feels like he's interviewing companions. We've had doctors that have felt that way, and 7 specifically, but
I think some of that comes down to Seven's manipulation.
it could be, and I think even 10 we've made comments where it feels like with Astrid and those kind of things. But those I think those stories are engineered to make you feel that that's happening. But I never with Paul McGann. But he does always seem to have this expectation that somebody's going to come along with him at the end. So it's kind of a weird dynamic there where, a lot of times we look at a story and go, oh, he's auditioning. I feel like he's auditioning. Never with McGann do I feel that way until the end when it is obviously he's like, well, you want to, in a roundabout way.
No, you're right. It's very much it goes on and it does its thing, and then in the last 5 minutes, you suddenly realize that he's had the guest room made up.
It's almost like the Eighth Doctor doesn't realize that he wants the person to come along until the end, until it's over. And he kind of reevaluates everything that's happened and thinks, oh, this might make a good companion.
I think the difference is he doesn't try to put them through the paces as they're going through whatever they're going through at the same time.
Yeah, that's true too.
And other doctors do.
Yeah.
He's so subtle about it too, even when he does. Well, you could come with me if you want.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's almost...
It's
I don't want to say passive. What's the reverse of passive aggressive?
Well, it's not passive aggressive.
It's just passive.
He makes it seem like an afterthought. Is what it does. What he does. It's like, oh, maybe you could come with me.
But then to have it, no, get off my planet. I never want to see you again. Oh, well, I'm really sorry. If I could do anything, I don't want to hear. And Paul McGann, once again, he just has this wonderful voice quality that he can go from strong and angry to anguished and soft spoken to wounded puppy.
Well, I think the end of this does more to lay the seeds of him turning, deciding to go down the road. I mean, obviously, Night of the Doctor, Night of the Doctor is the turning point for him.
It's the final straw, but this is the previous straw.
Yeah, right. So you can see them laying the seeds for that final decision.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they must do also in the new Time Wars stuff.
I'm assuming so too. I like the idea of Sontarans wanting to get into the Time War because, of course, they would. I mean, it's the greatest war that ever was fought.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Sontarans want to be a part of that?
That wasn't new though. They said that in the two-parter in the series too. They
yeah, that's true.
Made the comment that he didn't let him into the.
But exploring, how they're trying to get into it. I like that aspect of it. And the further exploration of a Sontaran, homeworld. I mean, we know Earth society. We know a lot about Sontarans, but the fact that there's still more to learn, like, about the whole ordeal situations, I thought was pretty interesting. If, as a species, we probably know a decent amount about Sontarans, but not as much as I think that we probably could. Not like Cybermen or Daleks, where we know pretty much every little aspect of their society. The Sontarans are still, I think, a fairly large mystery just because they show up and they're villains and they're militaristic and they don't really explore them much deeper than that.
And they're infrequently used to the point where when they do show up, it's like, cool. It's it's almost like they get a bonus points just because they're the Sontarans.
They're used a lot as cameos, not so much a focus story.
Yep.
More so in Big Finish, I think, than they have in the new series.
And we got another Rutan name drop.
Yeah. Or their side characters.
Yeah.
Like Drax or we haven't done Shakedown yet, have we?
No.
Okay,
I don't think so.
We have not.
With some Rutan in that. Yeah, no, I can't say much about this because I just thought this was the most original story idea. I like the usage of the Sontaran ordeal, and an ordeal is the fact that it's pretty much a punishment after court-martial, and it's almost a death sentence without going as far as saying it's a death sentence. But for the most part, they're having to be put through something that most likely is going to result in death. So I thought that was pretty cool. I genuinely was, even though I know that the 8th Doctor becomes the 9th Doctor, I genuinely was concerned when they were in the furnace and they were turning up the heat. And the Doctor, saying that this is I misjudged this, and you're thinking that he's misjudged Jax as a Jask as a character, trusting Jask in this situation, and it's not until they do the cut back at the end when they're talking about it, and it was because he thought he miscalculated the timing for the ship coming in, and not necessarily that Jask would still turn on them. So I thought that was kind of clever.
There was not a doubt in my mind that this was all going according to plan.
Until
he said, maybe I may have miscalculated. I went, oh, no!
Yeah, I thought
then I got
same
concerned.
thing. I was like, oh. Cool.
No, it was.
And exploring the effects of the time war it can have on a planet. I like that aspect of it. Was really neat to look into.
I think that's been hinted to before in other media, but this one really kind of drove home the idea of how the time war doesn't necessarily affect you directly. It can be an indirect effect in a very vastly different way, where time is changed for a planet, and so that things progress differently. A once peaceful timeline becomes a war ravaged timeline. I thought that was kind of a clever way to kind of put it.
And it's so much more clever than the Autons whose planet was just destroyed because of the time war. This is worse and so much more of a sci-fi and much more of a time war idea of what happens to a planet.
All right, well, what do we got coming up on the schedule, Sean?
Well, coming up on the schedule is it's Christmas time. Our next episode, we're going to do Big Finish Companion Chronicle 5.3, Season 5, Episode 3, Find and Replace, and the Big Finish Short Trips, Season 6, Episode 12, The Hesitation Deviation.
It sounds like a Big Bang Theory episode title.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Do we have that?
And potentially something else.
Not yet.
We don't have that?
I don't think so.
Let's see if we can get that.
I'll see if they've posted it yet.
We'll keep that a secret, and then it'll be a surprise next week if we do it.
There you go. And then obviously the following week is New Who. So I'm hoping that they'll start dropping some episode titles so that I can update the schedule going into the first part of the year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure we'll
Not that it really matters.
I'm sure we'll start getting those over the next few weeks, though.
If you haven't figured it out by now, the first 10 weeks of the new year, we're going to do Doctor Who.
We do have it?
We do have that.
All right. Well, I guess we can announce it since we have it. We're also going to do... Are you waiting on me to announce it?
Yeah, I don't know the title of it. So.
Well, I don't know what the title of it is.
I think it's just called Holiday Special.
Yeah, it's the Doctor Who Christmas special or holiday special for Titan's 12th Doctor. 13th Doctor series. And it sounds like the Doctor takes on Krampus. So that'll be kind of fun. Holiday special number 1.
So we will add that to our holiday lineup for next week.
Very good. All right. Well, make sure that you check out the website for updates as we go along. And as Sean mentioned earlier, be sure to click on that feedback link. What did you say? Click on the
push that button.
Push that button. Push that feedback button. You can also send feedback to feedback@travelingthevortex.com as well.
Or Facebook or Twitter or blah, blah, blah.
And until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.